Hello and welcome to ChooseFI. Today on the show, we have a really great episode teed up for you. Our guest today is Devin. And every so often at a live FI event, someone stands out so much that the rest of the group just stands up and takes notice. And it has only happened to me one other time, and that was Cody Berman way back in a very, very early Camp FI in Florida. At that point, he was a really young kid. He was 20 or 21, something like that. And it was just something so incredibly impressive about him. And it happened for a second time at the ChooseFI Vegas event that I did with Katie and Alan Donegan. And Devin was that person. There was just something really special about him. He is 22 years old, and the tale of action that he's taken since he joined the National Guard at 17 and found ChooseFI last year and has bombed through over 600 episodes. And what he's done is nothing short of remarkable. He showed me the presentation that he put together for his unit on personal finance and FI. And frankly, I wouldn't have produced something quite that good. So that's the kind of level he's playing at. And I think this is just going to be really fascinating for people of all ages to see what someone can do when they take concerted action over a short period of time and how you can radically transform your life. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. And with that, welcome to ChooseFI. Devin, my friend, it is so good to see you again. This is now twice in 2 months that I've seen your face. And yeah, it's really good to have you here. I've been really looking forward to this episode.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going well. It's going well, my friend. I know you've had a busy day. You are a college student studying mechanical engineering, and I know you just had a final. And I gave you an out to maybe do this another time. And you're like, no, this is my prize for finishing my final. So yeah, here we are. And I think, frankly, this is going to be a treat and a prize for the audience, for the community. So let's start at the beginning of your story, which I think probably a good launching point would be when you were 16 and you were contemplating joining the National Guard. So why don't we start from there and we'll kind of meander from that point.
Sounds good. And before we get to that, thank you so much for having me. This is truly an honor.
Oh, you are welcome. This is going to be good.
So before joining the National Guard, I've always been raised in a way where I was allowed to make my own decisions. My parents kind of raised me, they kind of were like bumpers on a bowling alley. They kind of gently nudged me back towards the right direction if I was going astray, or if I was really going off the rails, they got me back going the right direction really quick. But they always just empowered me to have agency within my own life. I got to just decide which sports I play, which ones I didn't. If I had a job, if I didn't, I was allowed to stay up as late as I wanted to, but I also had to go to school the next day and deal with the repercussions of my action. One of my biggest sayings from my dad growing up was, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So by the time I was 16, I was pretty much treated by my parents as an adult. I got to make my own decisions. And then I was in my Spanish class in my junior year of high school, and they brought in a recruiter. And they talked about all the benefits of joining the National Guard, particularly the financial benefits. And I always have known since probably about middle school that if I wanted to go to college, that I would be paying for my own education. So this was a way that I saw to pay for my education and also honor my family lineage. My dad's dad was in World War II. My mom's dad was in Vietnam. My dad was in Desert Storm. They didn't push me towards the military, but they also weren't going to be like, oh no, you can't do that. So I made the decision to join. And at the same time, I was really focusing in school to try and get an academic scholarship, which I did end up getting. I ended up getting a half ride to my college. So as a result, I am actually net positive going to college. And that was definitely the icing on the cake. Before I signed my contract, I already knew I had a scholarship, and that made it so I could go to college not for free, but be paid to go here.
Oh my goodness. Okay, let's slow down because there's so much here that I want to dive into. First, as a parent myself, I have an almost 16-year-old and I have a 12-year-old. And honestly, my wife and I have not raised our kids in ways where I think they could make the decisions that you were able to make. I'd like to believe that they have some agency, but I suspect also that we veer into like that snowplow parenting a little bit, maybe too much, where we try to get obstacles out of the way for them. So when I hear how you're describing your parents, it sounds amazing. And it reminds me the guardrails way back at the beginning of ChooseFI, and you've probably listened to this more recently than I have, but I talked about Jocko Willink, the ex-Navy SEAL who has a podcast called Jocko Podcast, and he talks about discipline equals freedom. And that's kind of not discipline in terms of like rah beating yourself up, but like I think about it in terms of, okay, setting up a framework. And as you describe those boundaries, like your parents allowed you freedom inside of those boundaries. And they never let you get too far off track, as you said, because clearly then you're veering into, oh no, like not that I'm implying you would get arrested or something like that. But, as long as you're within those lines, have the freedom to make decisions. Like you said, hey, listen, you could stay up as late as you want, but look, you got to get up at 6:30 the next morning and you have tests coming and you have X, Y, and Z happening. All right, here are the ramifications of that. And I think that's really impressive that they did that. And I'd love to just ask, like, is there anything you could think of, like, as an actionable takeaway for parents? Like, how you think your parents implemented that so well? Because I can tell you as a parent, that's not an easy thing to thread that needle.
I would say this is from the Huberman Lab podcast. They were just had an episode on growth mindset, and in my school district, I had a phenomenal school district, and we were like taught that growing up. I think it was third grade when I first heard about it. In the podcast, he said that kids just need to feel, and I might be butchering it, real and heard. And I feel like I've always had that growing up. Like, for example, I was in dance for 10 years from second grade to senior year, and I still go back to my studio and I teach. But at the same time, I was also in karate and basketball. Those are two sports that my dad would have much rathered me probably stay in just because I am a male and it's just kind of against the status quo.
Yeah.
But they gave me the agency to choose dance because I had a passion for it and I loved it. So I backed off of basketball because I was 5'2" freshman year of high school. So I was always really short. But I feel like I have to claim myself. I'm up to 5'11" now.
Nice.
But eventually we got to a point closer to like middle school, start of high school, where I was in hip hop all 10 years and I was trying to go towards jazz, tap, and ballet, making it to the competition teams. And I remember this very distinctly. I went on like a really long walk while my sister was in her dance class with my mom. And we were just talking about the ins and outs of the situation because we were at a point where like you have to pick either you're going to go follow karate, which I already had my black belt at that point. So I'd be getting like my second degree, my third degree, and so on and so forth. Or I could pursue dance and put the time and effort to make it onto the competition teams. And just that conversation, we were walking around and I got to see like all the if then that statements of my decision. And I feel like making your kids be able to see that thread, like if you do this, then this is going to happen, is like probably the biggest thing that you need growing up, because it's very dangerous to raise your kids like almost in a bubble. And then they turn 18, you just pop it and they have no frame of reference on what to do. Like for me, by the time I was 16, I was treated as a full adult in the eyes of my parents. And when I came back from basic training, when I was 17, like I was a full adult. Like I almost didn't have to ask for anything I wanted to do because they trusted me. They knew I'd make good decisions.
Yeah, that is incredible. I do want to double back to that net positive and the half ride and such, but what did the conversation look like when you went to your parents and said, I want to join the military, I want to join the National Guard? You're 16 at that point. Obviously, like you said, you have a significant family lineage of service. So I suspect it wasn't totally out of left field. But that said, you're still the 16-year-old son at that point, right? Like, how did you broach that topic with them?
There's a presentation in, like I said, my Spanish class, and I probably came back home from school that day and kind of brought up the subject. Like, I think I want to do this. And it was kind of a similar conversation to the dance one. It's like there are repercussions to your actions. Like if I end up joining, like there's a very real possibility that I could end up losing my life in service or be away from my family for long periods of time. Like they made me see the give and take of the situation. Like, sure, yeah, you'll get your college paid for, but what if you're gone for a year and a half? Just made it sure I knew what I was getting myself into. I kind of had to make my case of like, yes, mom, I'm seeing the whole picture. I'm not just, oh, free college. And this is a very important thing to everybody out there listening. Do not join the military just for college. Join it for you. Join it because you have a sense of purpose, because all of us give something in service. Whether you joined for 3 years and got out, whether you did join your career, everybody gave some, and some of us end up giving all. So it's not a decision that can be made lightly.
Yeah, that is sage wisdom and really, really important. So this obviously is a personal finance show. And since you talked about the financial ramifications of it, the potentially very positive financial ramifications. It feels natural, even with that important caveat and wisdom. Of course, this is not something to do just for financial, but it seems like this was a big part of the beginning part of your journey. So let's talk about, I guess, the benefits of joining the military and what the interplay was with that half ride academic scholarship. Because I suspect there are going to be some people who are not sure how that could be net positive. Like I would have imagined that it kind of just offset itself, but it sounds like you actually ended up to the good where you were potentially depositing some money each month or semester.
So it varies state to state. I'm in the National Guard. I ended up joining through the split option program when I was 17. So I went to, between my junior and senior year, I went to basic training. I came back, started my senior year of high school bald, finished my senior year of high school, and then left again to go to training. And some of the basic benefits are, you get your insurance, your healthcare, all the regular military benefits. And then the school benefits usually vary state to state. So, like, for example, in Minnesota, we get full tuition covered to the cost of the University of Minnesota. And there's also some other federal GI benefits that you can take advantage of. And then we also have federal tuition assistance. And then in Minnesota, if you use your federal tuition assistance, you deduct that from what you're getting back from the state because we're owned by the state and by the federal government. But how I ended up in the net positive is in the eyes of the state, my scholarships count as me bringing money to the table. And it's a state reimbursement. So you have to pay in advance.
Okay.
And then you get reimbursed at the end of every semester. But me paying in advance is my scholarships. So when I get to the end of the semester, I get reimbursed my scholarships.
Oh, wow.
Minus fees and books. It's only tuition, nothing else.
Sure. Okay. No, that makes perfect sense. And right. So you are concurrently in the National Guard and going to, I assume, full time university, but I don't know exactly what your course load is or when you expect to finish. But I guess talk me through the interplay of that and how viable this is. Again, with the caveat that, of course, you never do this just for the money. Clearly, I'm not going to say it again. We've given that caveat now 4 times. It's really important. But for someone who's listening to this, who's 15 or 16 and is thinking about this, like, how does that work in terms of, hey, how can you be in the Guard and be in college full time? And I know, at least the last time we spoke, I think you're already at the rank of E5, which seems like hugely significant considering you're only 22 years old. And I'm not sure, like, without being full time in the military, how you get promoted that quickly. I imagine it's based on your significant merit, but I will not ask you to answer that part. But talk me through like this interplay of all this stuff, like how it actually works in terms of where your time goes.
Yeah. So with the split option program that I did, like I said, I joined March of 2019, and then you go to basic training that summer. You go to basic training, you come back and finish your senior year of high school. What the recruiter sells you, because a wrench always gets thrown in the plan. It never goes exactly as you plan.
Such is life, right?
Yep. It's a big joke. My recruiter lied to me. All the military folks out there will get that. So I come back, I finish my senior year of high school. I was supposed to leave in the start of the summertime, come back right before school started in the fall, and then go to school. And once you get back from your training, you do your regular 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer. And then while you're in high school still, you're not actually with your unit. You're in what's called a recruit sustainment program. And you just still do your 1 weekend a month. And then you go to your basic and come back. But what ended up happening with me was I was supposed to leave summer of 2020, and that's when COVID was going on. So I got a phone call one day that was just, all right, you're going to leave in October. So I had to take a gap year. That's just one example of like, we all give a little bit of something, like it threw away my initial plan. And then, like, one of my friends, we joined together. She was in the same boat as me. She got delayed a little bit. She came back, and immediately when she got back, she went on I want to say it was a 13-month deployment.
Oh, wow.
So she had to take 2 gap years. And in terms of interplay with actual college, I got back, started at the university in, I want to say September of 2021. And the semester was going really great, doing my 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summertime. But when we got to the end of the semester, another wrench got thrown in the plan. I got selected to be a part of COVID relief. Like, they had National Guard soldiers out in nursing homes doing
Yeah.
certified nursing assistant stuff and helping out. And I got selected to do that for a mission. And I was about to like walk to Veteran Services and drop all my classes because they can always call you up at the drop of a hat. Like when you're needed, you are needed. But luckily for me, I was about to drop all my classes. And then I checked my email and it was pretty much just almost 2 words, just mission canceled.
Oh,
So
wow. Sorry, never mind.
yeah, I already like emailed all my teachers and had to like, I'm like, never
Wow.
mind, I'm not leaving anymore. But if everything goes to plan, everything's like cake and ice cream going perfect, nothing's happening in the world. You do your 2 weeks in the summertime, you do your 1 weekend a month, and it should have minimal impact with school, depending on how up tempo your unit is. Some units have longer drills, like 3 or 4 days. So it all kind of interplays. And then depends on the teacher. They'll give you usually some extension or something if you have to miss for military service.
Sure, sure. And that makes sense, of course. Okay. So yeah, that's a great background. So right, these first couple years, so that sounds like it was about 3 years ago, give or take, when you said you started at university. So fast forwarding a little bit, so you're getting this net positive every semester, it sounds like. I don't know how big or small that amount of money was, but there's some leftover money and you're earning some income basically. Like what are you doing? Because this predated finding ChooseFI, which it sounds like that happened in June-ish of 23. So only about 1 year ago to the day, basically. What are you doing with money at this point? Like, what was your background in personal finance from your parents or school, or if at all? And you have this extra money every month. What are you doing with it for those couple years between, I guess, starting and finding FI?
So I always been pretty money savvy. I'm a numbers person. I'm an engineer, so it's a easily applicable to money. But I would say I was lucky enough that luck. I got back from AIT and my car died while I was gone,
Okay.
and it was going to be like a $2,000 repair on a 2001 Grand Prix. So I just decided to use the money that I was gonna like use that as a down payment. So I had a car payment. I've been living on my own since I started college, so I had rent, utilities, and all that stuff. And then in terms of saving, I've always just had saved. I invested a little bit, but like I wasn't really consistent with it. I also
Mm,
wasn't fully aware of like what I was doing. Like it was like a Google search of top 10 ETFs, and then I
yep.
just invested evenly in all of that. Three of them happened to be like the S&P 500s, and I just didn't even know.
Redundancy at its best.
Yep. And then like in terms of other money skills, like as soon as I turned 18, I signed up for credit cards because I knew a little bit about credit card rewards points and cash back. At this point, it was just cash back because I didn't have enough of a credit history to get a good credit rewards points card. That was also another thing my parents were nervous about. I had to argue for that because it's like, why do you need a credit card? You're 18 years old. I was like, well, if I just use this my debit card and pay it off in full, I just get paid to use it pretty much. Get a little 1% on top of my spending.
Yeah, that's so smart. And like you said, you establish your credit history at that point, right? The length of credit history starts at 18 then, which is absolutely awesome. So yeah, responsibly done. That's a wonderful strategy.
Yeah, and that was the other reason I wanted to start it because I've always had like, I don't even know where it came from, but I was always wanted to own some real estate or even just wanted to get my own house and knew I wanted to have a good credit score to get a good interest rate.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, it is amazing. Sometimes you just pick these things up out of nowhere and it's hard to remember, frankly, even though for you it was only 4 years ago or thereabouts. But nevertheless, just the fact that you were thinking about that at 18 is just really pretty impressive. So, I mean, it sounds like real estate was on your mind. I'm kind of curious as your story evolves, and we'll come back to this, but you said you've been renting this entire time and you're also interested in real estate. So my mind is pinging for like, oh man, he's the perfect person for a house hack in some way. I would imagine that's somehow or another on your mind, but is there any kind of teaser now? Is that worth going into, or is it frankly just not on your mind?
It's definitely on my mind. I plan on once I reach my 6 years, that's when I get access to the VA loan. And that's when I plan on buying my first duplex. Since finding ChooseFI, I've saved a little south of, I want to say 15K towards that down payment.
Nice. Oh, that's fantastic. Do you have a sense of well, I mean, I guess it's hard to know precisely where life is going to take you, obviously, right? So you'll be in the National Guard. I assume you'd be in or around Minnesota, but do you have any sense of like what a duplex is going to cost you? Have you already started thinking about it on that kind of concrete level?
Yes, actually, like I want to say 2 weekends ago, I made a real estate analysis calculator just because,
Of course you did.
yeah, somebody last summer I was working at my internship, I made it like a really big point to get really good at Excel. And I was on Instagram and somebody did like an analysis of just a random real estate property and kind of showed a couple of the boxes in their spreadsheet. And I kind of just reverse engineered it from that video, not at my own, for like the 1% rule and all that stuff, cap rate.
That is brilliant. Cool. Well, yeah, I was going to send you to some resources, but it sounds like you're you're way ahead of the game. But I'm not sure if you've gotten to this episode quite yet. But Chad Carson, we had him on recently about the small and mighty real estate investor. That was one of my all-time favorite real estate episodes that we've ever done. And of course, Scott Trench, who's the now CEO of Bigger Pockets, is just an incredible resource. And I know he was the one who I think was the first time I had heard of house hacking. I know he didn't originate it, but yeah, his book Set for Life is fantastic. So that's amazing that you already have your own financial model that you reverse engineered. That makes perfect sense. I guess so. You said 6 years after starting the National Guard, you can get that VA loan. So it sounds like that's somewhat right around the corner ish, late 2025. Is that roughly accurate?
March 2025 for me.
Oh, nice. Okay. I'm guesstimating here, so that wasn't too bad. Wow. So yeah, that's not too far in the distance. And how does the down payment work on that? Because I know it's significantly more beneficial, right? Like you don't have to put the 10 to 20% down on that. Is that still accurate?
Yeah,
Or is it just the interest rate that's more advantageous?
I believe with the VA loan, you are able to put 0% down plus closing,
Jeez.
but I don't feel comfortable with that. So I'm definitely going
Yeah,
to put a
no,
little bit down.
I'm not holding you to that. Obviously, it's not like you've went through it recently, right? So, but that's just a cool thing. It's seeing down the field. I think that's what I love about your story. Just so far, it's like you're not just living in the moment. You're thinking through what will this mean for me down the road. Like, I mean, frankly, not that many 18-year-olds have the wherewithal to say, "Hey, look, I'm going to want to buy a investment property or a home 5, 6, 7 years from now. So I'm going to open up a credit card today to get my credit history going." Like that's super impressive. Like saying, all right, look, a couple of years from now, I'm going to buy this property. I'm looking for a duplex or a triplex probably because that way I can house hack it. I have this VA loan, but that only comes into effect once I've been in for 6 years. I know this sounds mundane to you, Devin, but I think most people are just living for today. They're making very impulsive decisions. And I think it's like a hallmark of the FI community is you understand the rules and you think long term, right? Like, I mean, you've listened to so many episodes recently. Like, how many times you've heard me say that? Like, understand the rules of the game and think down the road. And I mean, you'd be hard pressed to go wrong in life if you were starting from there. So, anyway, sidebar over. So, I totally derailed us on a lark there. And I think it was important to talk about because I had a strong suspicion there was going to be something cool with house hacking in there. So, let's fast forward to June of 23, where it sounds like things kind of just really took off. So you said you had an internship that summer. So that was your first taste of corporate America. And somehow or another, you found the FI community, you found ChooseFI. So talk us through that whole time period.
Yeah, so as you said, I started my internship late May of 2023. And in the first 2 weeks, I listened to just music when I was in my cubicle. And I eventually got bored of it, which is very hard for me to do because I want to say last year I listened to 60 days worth of music on Spotify.
Oh my God.
And within the first 2 weeks of being in my internship, I was already bored of listening to my music just over and over again. So I decided I would try and find a podcast. I wanted to learn about money more because since I was a kid, I always knew it was just gets you power and gives you agency on what you want to do in the long term. I was like best money podcast, Google searched it, and then I found ChooseFI. I want to say it was actually the first one that I like clicked on. Like I was just looking through the description, like, oh, all right, these two guys sound half decent, so I'll give them a listen. Yes. So I just pretty much started exclusively listening to the podcast instead of my music while I was at work. And then I just started taking little tidbits of action that I could do from the podcast. The first one of those is probably my expense calculator, just because like I thought I was doing pretty good financially. It's like I get paid to go to school. The way I set up my finances, I kind of like would get my big lump sum payment. I'd buy myself something nice, and then the rest of it I would just all right, I'll set aside 3 months of rent. I'll set aside 1,000 for like my food and all that stuff. And then this $200, $300 I'll use to get a new tattoo or buy myself X, Y, and Z. But I was going through this tracker and I went through, like I found it in June and I went all the way back to January and was just analyzing my entire year. And I found out that in the first 6 months of 2023, I had 5K in unnecessary spending.
Huh.
The way I had my expense tracker, I categorized it by like food, housing, electricity, and all that stuff. But then I had like an overarching category of necessary and unnecessary.
Okay.
And like in first couple of months, it all rested between somewhere in like 30 to 40% of the spending that I was doing was unnecessary, like going out to eat or just random purchases on Amazon. And then that was kind of like my eyes opened. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm doing good. I get paid to go to school. I have no student debt, but I'm also just hemorrhaging money as a college student unnecessarily. So that kind of made me like not even like reel it in because I was just got more intentional about it. Like in the months following finding ChooseFI, like I spent more time with my friends. I ate healthier foods. I went out more. Like it's just the money that I was spending was more intentional. And like following the summer, I'm down to like 20% unnecessary spending. Like you have to have a little bit of fun. You can't just
Yeah.
cut it to the bone, especially in college.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's interesting because the word unnecessary makes it sound like it's totally frivolous. And clearly, that's not what you're saying. It's just you were trying to categorize in terms of, all right, what truly is necessary and then what's everything else that I'm spending. And you're kind of lumping it all together. And I think the single most important thing you said in there, which I really want everybody to dial in on, is you're being more intentional now. You're not depriving yourself. In fact, the opposite. Like you said, you're spending more time with friends. You're spending quality time. You're eating better. You're just being intentional. You're being healthier. And I think there's always some fear that somebody's going to shut a podcast off or just shut out the financial independence community because they heard about those fire people, right? Like, how many times have you heard like people railing on those fire people who are just so cheap and they're not living like, no, 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 that's not what we're doing here. We're living lives of intentionality, right? And I mean, Devin just described that perfectly. It's how can you spend less and live more? That's the goal. And that is almost invariably what we see. So, yeah, I mean, I'll get down off my soapbox, but Devin, that is like the perfect way to encapsulate financial independence, right? It's spend less, but live more.
Exactly. I love to travel. I love going to concerts. That summer, I want to say went to like over 5 concerts. And like when I go to concerts, it's worth it for me to like pay and get those good tickets because I love the experience of going to concerts. I
Yeah.
traveled, I went camping with my friends. Like I was just, what I spent my money on was intentional. I just wasn't just, oh, that'd be nice to have. It would be like, do I really want this right now? Is it like, am I just getting this out of convenience? Am I buying this sandwich because I'm hungry or just because I'm bored? Especially like at work, like they had a cafeteria and I was like, oh, I could just get a sandwich right now, but I don't need the sandwich right now. I'm not hungry. I have a lunchbox packed already. It's just being really intentional about what I wanted to spend my money on. And like, I will always make time for my friends and I'll always make time to travel and have new experiences.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And yeah, we can fast forward almost to today. And I know you told me recently about a travel rewards win that you just recently had, almost exactly what you just described. It's experiences. It's how can I get something and really enjoy it? And you're taking this incredible trip with you and your girlfriend, and it's also wrapped around a movie that you love and a concert experience, right?
Yes. My birthday gift to myself when I turned 21 was my Amex Gold card. That's what I got myself as a because it's the $250 fee. So I
Yeah, right.
splurged. So I've just been racking up rewards points for a year. And this was my first time redeeming those rewards points. Me and my girlfriend are big fans of the movie La La Land. And she was always wanted to go to one of the concerts in the park where it's like they play the movie and then they have a live symphony playing the entire music score. And she found out they were doing another one in September and told me about it. And I said, do you want to go? And she was like, well, yeah, but I don't have that much money right now. I'm like, let me see if I can find a travel rewards redemption.
Yeah.
And I did find one. I saved us, I want to say each ticket was roughly like $330 from Minneapolis to LA. And I ended up spending, I want to say it was like 50,000 points.
Wow, that's incredible. So I'm guessing, I think Minneapolis is a big Delta hub, right?
It is, yes.
Was it a Delta redemption?
Yep.
Nice. That's what's so interesting. I think here's another little tip for anybody out there is always Google your airport name and then wiki. So in this case, I literally just Googled in the last 5 seconds after I had that guess, Minneapolis airport wiki. And any airport in the world has a Wikipedia page where you can scroll down to the airlines and destinations area. And it just gives you a sense of what airlines are flying out of your local airport or airports. And yeah, you see Delta here makes up, I mean, it looks like they have dozens upon dozens of locations that they fly to direct from Minneapolis, and actually Sun Country Airlines, which I'm not all that familiar with actually. So anyway, that's just a kind of a cool way as a starting point for travel rewards is just go to that airlines and destinations section of your airport's Wikipedia page. So yeah, that's pretty impressive to find that's a saver level ticket on Delta, which those are not easy to come by, period, not less when you have to line it up for a trip. So bravo, Devin. Good job.
Thank you. And when I went to Vegas, this is one thing I'm super mad about Vegas is that I looked online when I was planning on buying to see which tickets were available. There's a flight from Minneapolis to Vegas for 20,000 Amex points.
Wow.
And I didn't jump on it right away. And then I went back, like I want to say like a day or two later, and the flight was sold out. And that was like my biggest regret in like recent memory.
Yeah, it's hard with rewards points. It really is. Sometimes, yeah, you have to make those split last second decisions because, yeah, I mean they do go away. I did want to ask you actually. So Vegas, let's talk about this. So you are obviously really, really busy. You're a full-time college student. You're in the National Guard. You're really, really busy, but yet you flew halfway across the country to come to a FI event, your first FI event. And I think I'd love for you to talk about like how did you make that decision? And what do you think you got out of a live event? Because there are a lot of people out there who are listening to this who are on the fence. Like they might have a local Camp Fi meetup in their area, or maybe they're thinking about coming to Economy next year in Cincinnati, or one of these events that I'm going to hold with the Donegans again. What was it about that that made you jump on it? And I guess then the second question is, what did you get out of it?
Well, I was listening to the podcast and then you guys announced it like in the episode and I was like, that sounds fun. And then I just being on like this FI journey, I had the bandwidth and my finances to just say, oh, I can drop the I don't know, it was probably for me like $1,000-something trip and just go to Vegas for a weekend. And I fully attribute that to already just being on the path to FI. It's just you get a little bit more freedom. Just every single dollar you get behind your side of the ledger. And I was just able to like hop on the opportunity because I knew it would be gone really fast as soon as it got like announced. And then it was pretty much like the night of I heard the announcement and I was contemplating it, tried to find a couple friends to see if I could drag them along with me, but I wasn't able to. And then I just booked for myself and then bought my tickets for the flights and headed on down.
Nice. That is really cool. Yeah, and you're right. It did sell out rather quickly. So, yeah, good decision to jump on it. And from my point of view, it seemed like you had a really good time. I think it was really neat to just see 80 people from the FI community all converge on this wild Vegas, right? And but yet have this just incredibly connected weekend. And I think that's not something you normally see when you when you go to Vegas. It's usually craziness and debauchery. And we had a weekend of designing an extraordinary life and connection. And I think it was a really special time.
It really was just being able to be around people who think the same way I do, at least about this one specific thing. Like we all have this common thread of this is how we think about money. And it just made it very easy to talk to everybody. We obviously all had different opinions on a myriad of things in our lives, but this was our one thing. It was just really nice to meet other people. And it was also a very great opportunity for me to like just learn from people who were a couple steps ahead of me in terms of life. I was the youngest person there. And then I think there was two of us that were under 30 and then the rest of the group was 30 and up. So it's just like where I'm at right now, I've always been like, I don't have to make mistakes to learn. I learn from my mistakes, but I don't have to be the one to make them. If I can learn from somebody else's mistakes, I'm going to take that opportunity. And that was another thing that I got out of it, like just hearing people's stories and just the sense of community. Like the group chat is still active. It's been a month and like that hardly ever happens.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I love that. That's the second time I would say it's sage wisdom here, just in the first bit of this podcast in terms of yeah, you can learn from your mistakes, and that's wonderful. And that is an important part of life. But you can also fast forward your journey by finding people you trust and respect in your life and seeing what their mistakes were. Maybe they can help you shortcut them. And I think that's another strategy that goes hand in hand with the inevitable mistakes that you're going to make, right? Devin and I, we all make mistakes. Let's be clear. There's no perfect path to FI, that's for sure. And yeah, it's been really neat to see that what's up chat continue. And yeah, it's just a really, really special group of people. And I think I've found that from a lot of the live events that I've been to in the past. It's not quite to the level of this Vegas thing, but you always walk away with the couple connections that are just really, really important and meaningful. So yeah, really, really cool. So okay, let's go back. You just have so many things that are just launching points for us to jump into. So June 23, it sounds like you started tracking your net worth and expenses. And that was really an eye opener. And you started making very intentional decisions. And I know looking at the email you sent me in early April, I mean, it looks like you have 24 bullet points of things that you've done since then. And I love for, without me interrupting you every time, just like give us a flavor of what those early months look like.
In terms of the early months, I like instantly overhauled my Google searched portfolio that I had in my Roth IRA. Like it was a Roth IRA, I at least opened it up on there and started investing in there because I knew it was tax free and had the tax advantages. But I instantly overhauled that and started making contributions to like max it out by the end of the year. So like I just did the math to figure out exactly how much I'd have to invest every week in order to get that. And then I just factored that into how I was saving my paycheck for my internship. I went into my internship pay portal and instantly started saving. I want to say one of the checks, it was just 30% flat towards my saving up for my down payment because I was making good money as a college student. I was making, I think last summer, $25 an hour. So I got to really be intentional about where I wanted that money to go because it's really easy as a college student to say, oh, I'm making $25 an hour. I can do just about anything now.
Yeah. Scrooge McDuck style swimming in your money.
Mm-hmm.
A 30-plus-year-old reference. I'm not sure how many people get that.
I get it.
Nice.
Yeah, and just I also started because one of your early episodes is like all about eating healthily and being active in the gym. I've always been an active person in the gym since I got back from basic training, and I've always just lacked in the diet area. And I tried to cut out as much processed food as possible as a result of listening to your guys' episode on that stuff. So like now when I went into the grocery store, I would just stick to like the produce section in like the outer aisle, which is like the milk, dairy, and all the other stuff. And like the only inside aisle that I'd go to would be the bread section. But I found when I did that, I was getting like more volume of food. The food was healthier and it was less expensive. I also started going to Aldi, which was game changer. Definitely go to Aldi or your equivalent of wherever you are at. And I just started shopping there. I would just eat majorly whole foods. Like I would buy, I want to say like 5 or 6 things of different types of berries or whatever fruit was in season. And like my lunches would pretty much be like whatever main meal I cooked. Like I like to meal prep. I'll cook a big meal that's healthy, high in protein, and then just supplement it with like my fruits and other snacks. And before finding ChooseFI, I was like granola bars, fruit snacks, and stuff like that. And then I kind of cut those out and then started eating healthier. The one episode of like finding a job in college that you can pretty much get paid to study, I did that. I got a job at my apartment building as a receptionist, and I literally just I'm at the secondary desk, not even the primary desk. So I just sit
Okay.
there and study the entire time, and it's not like fantastic pay, but any pay is better than no pay for studying.
Right. Something you'd be doing anyway, right? You're sitting there studying. Why not get paid for it? That's brilliant.
Yes, and then there's so many things on that list, so I definitely need you to jog my memory.
Yeah. So it looks like, right, we talked about saving for the down payment. That's already in. Oh, one interesting one was looking into military benefits and realized you weren't using a certain benefit you were entitled to and getting it not only going forward, but actually retroactively as well. Talk us through that.
Yeah, that's a good one. So another thing that I did was look into my military benefits, and I found out that I was not using the Chapter 1606 GI Bill, which is just I think it's like 450-ish, depending on your course load. That gets just direct deposited to you as the soldier. It doesn't go through the school or anything.
Okay.
So I talked to my school about getting it moving forward, and the VA rep was like, "Do you want to be back paid?" And I was like,
Wow.
"Well,
Yes, please.
of course." I'm like, "Is there a catch to being back paid?"
Yeah. Do I want to be back paid? No, no, I don't.
Yeah, pretty much. Don't quote me on it, but this Chapter 1606 GI Bill interacts with, I believe, the post 9/11 GI Bill. In it, if you use one, you can't really use the other, or it reduces the benefits of the other. But the thing is, I didn't have this other form of GI Bill yet. So for me, it was no cost pretty much because I wasn't really losing anything because I didn't yet have it. In the future, I might have access to this other GI Bill, but I didn't have it yet. So it was a sure shot decision for me. I'm like, yeah, I would love to. So I got back paid for that, and then I get my $400-ish a month moving forward. All I have to do is remember to call the VA on the first. Speaking of which, I need to do that after this. But
Yeah, we're recording this on the first of a month. So, yeah. Hey, that could be something. I know I'm crazy about that Todoist app, but that would be a nice recurring task, right? The first of every month or the first of whenever you have to do it, make that call. It was funny. I actually just got an email from Todoist that I've been with them for, I think it was 7 years, 11 months, and X number of days. And I reached the highest level of like karma there. So like I've literally been using this thing for the better part of a decade. It really is a really great tool. Something like that when you use it 100%. So anyway, total sidebar. So okay, that is awesome. I know a couple of these other bullets are you actually helping family members. So both sister and parents in some way with this newfound knowledge that you have.
yes, so I set up my sister. We both did really well in high school, so she got a full ride scholarship to her college
Wow.
out of state. So I went through and helped her just set up her Roth IRA. She hasn't been making enough to like max it out, but I still started just trickling in a little bit week by week. And then I just told her, like, tell me when you want me to make the money stop trickling
Okay.
in. Like, if you feel like your reserves are getting too low or something, because she just turned 18. She's 3 years younger than me. So, like, you don't really have opportunities for the most part to invest. You just have your savings account. She had a good little nest egg in there. I'm like, you don't need to have just all this sitting here making zero interest.
Sure.
So I started just investing her like dollar cost averaging that into the her Fidelity account. And then for my parents, I went through all of their retirement accounts and just took them out of a couple high fee options that they were in and just changed the split of a couple of them. And then just a couple of my other friends, my one friend who is the one that got deployed, she jokingly says I'm her financial advisor. And like I have been for like a couple of years. She's like, lump sum, you've probably made me at least like 5K just through our friendship.
Nice.
But I went in and just like I told her to open up a high yield savings account just so she can make interest because she was the one that got deployed. So when you're deployed, you can't spend money where you're deployed at. So she had a massive nest egg from her deployment. And I'm like, just put it in here if you're not willing to invest it right now. It's hard to just drop that investment into the market, you know? So she's just put a good chunk of that and she's getting hundreds of dollars of interest a month now rather than her 500 a year or whatever it was
Yeah.
before.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, it's so impressive really to help other people. And frankly, that people feel comfortable talking to you about this. Like there's something special there. And I don't know necessarily that I think you're too humbled to maybe dive into precisely why people feel so comfortable. But I suspect that it's, hey, people understand like you're living this. You're an example of doing it right. And people understand like Devin's somebody I can go to ask questions, and it's awesome that your parents that they let you frankly do that because I think a lot of parents wouldn't. And it's also really neat that you said in their retirement accounts you're able to do this because yeah, like that's the nice thing is especially with retirement accounts, like there's no taxable issue moving money into and out of different funds, right? Because it's all just under that umbrella. Obviously, you're not making a withdrawal or a distribution from that retirement account. You're just moving the actual investments. And yeah, I mean, if you being the person listening to this, or you have people in your life who like, hey, they're in those expensive funds, almost invariably there's going to be a low cost S&P 500 or total stock market fund that you can move them into. And yeah, I mean, that's like a really high value thing for something that, again, there's no taxable ramifications of that as if it were a taxable brokerage, right? That's where I think a lot of people have questions in terms of like, what's going to happen if I sell all these things and their gains? Like, yeah, there are taxable issues, but not, I think, in almost every case that I can think of, not in retirement accounts. So, great place to start, Devin. And let's actually jump in. I mentioned this before in the intro, but I think it's the perfect time to talk about it. Is you are helping people one on one, but you also are helping your unit in the guard, right? Like you put together a presentation that you showed me at the Vegas event. And yeah, I was not blowing smoke on that. Like that was just a really incredibly impressive presentation. And did you take that on your own volition? Like, or did you somehow step up as, hey, I'm a sergeant here? Like, how did that work? Talk me through how that actually happened.
Yeah, so in terms of being an NCO, I'm a young NCO in terms of how long I've been an NCO, and I'm also just young to be an NCO.
And that's non-commissioned officer for everybody out there.
Yes, and in order to take this promotion, I had to leave the unit that I'd been with since I joined the Guard and go to a new unit to our sister company just because that's where the slot was. And they're like, if you want it, it's yours. So I was brand new in this unit. Nobody really knew who I was. And then there's a lot of downtime in the National Guard, just and in the Army in general. It's a hurry up and wait type of program. It's the way the military works. You get there early. But my lieutenant was like, you're teaching a class tomorrow. He didn't care about what. He's just, I want to fill some of this white space that we have. And so I was like, what do I know about that I can teach well enough? And I'm like, I could tell everybody about personal finance because it's something that I'm really passionate about. And I feel like there's not enough education about it
Yeah.
in, frankly, our society. Like, we need to learn more about money. And if I could do my piece to help further that goal, I'm going to do it. So I put together this presentation. It was Retirement 101, just to teach everybody about retirement on the civilian side as well as the military side of things. And it went all the way through like the 4% rule, the different type of funds, what a broad-based low-cost index fund is, and just recommendations. And I just kind of wanted to let my unit know who I was, and also that, like, if you want to talk about money, I would be a resource that you could come to.
That is really, really cool. So, wow, that was you're presenting tomorrow and you put this thing together?
Yeah,
That's amazing.
overnight.
Yeah, I was not kidding. I don't think with all the amount I've researched this and whatever expertise level I do have, like I don't think I would have put together as professional of a presentation if I had a month to do it, now less overnight. So have people taken you up on that? Has anybody talked to you one-on-one about personal finance, or have you done other events, or was it that one-time thing?
I have had a couple people come up and say they want to talk to me. None of them have taken the initiative to actually do so yet, but there was one. He was a new to the unit. We actually came in the same month because I was also new to the unit, but I've been in the military longer, so I was an NCO and he was lower enlisted. And we went out to lunch on one of our breaks and we were just talking about finances. That was one of the first ones. And then my unit just actually, I was on the rear detachment. They just came back from deployment. So I want to have maybe do it again, but to the whole company because it was kind of just like one quarter of the company that I did this presentation to.
Gotcha. That's very cool. Okay. Well, yeah, to be continued on that. So, yeah, it sounds like, again, going down this just incredible list here, it sounds like knowledge acquisition is a big thing for you. So, obviously, you've devoured 600 plus ChooseFI episodes. I know you told me that you rediscovered a love for reading and you actually started a book club with your friends. Like, I think this is what I'm kind of gleaning from you is like, there's this knowledge acquisition and then initiative, like starting things. I think that's really neat. I'd love to hear, like, how do you think the knowledge acquisition, you can talk about books specifically if you want, but just knowledge acquisition generally, like, how do you think about that? Because there's a lot of information out there in the world, obviously. And I think a lot of people struggle in terms of how to curate information properly, how to find reputable sources, how to think through something as opposed to just kind of getting brainwashed sometimes. And obviously we're hopelessly biased here that ChooseFI is, I would like to believe, extremely, extremely reputable source. But that said, you have to cut through the noise, and that's not easy for anybody to do. Like, how do you think about that kind of knowledge acquisition?
I'd say like what draws me to knowledge acquisition is just like knowledge is power. Like how you guys always say, like you don't know what you don't know. And I guess I just wanted to learn the stuff that I didn't know so I could see more opportunities. Like I've always been in this growth mindset just because the way I was raised, my great school system, and then going to the military. And like when I was at basic training, I think like one of the first nights I was there, I was laying in my bunk. I was on the top bunk, staring at the ceiling, questioning like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
And like I was looking back through my life and I could see like the domino effect that led me to there. I'm like, well, what are the dominoes that I could place right now to get to where I want to be in the future? So like I could see like the link of how I got to where I am now if I could try and do that forward facing.
Yeah.
And I realized I need to learn more about what I didn't know if I wanted to like make the best decisions possible and end up on the right path.
Yeah.
The way I conceptualize like time is like there's a whole bunch of different timelines that you could end up taking and just decisions. If you make one to A and B, you might just cut off everything on A. Or if you go down B, it might reconnect later down the line, but you might miss a whole bunch of little things along the way. So I guess just trying to figure out what I didn't know and what I wanted to know and what I needed to know to get where I wanted to be are like my big things for wanting to acquire knowledge.
Yeah.
And starting the book club, I don't know, I think I just ended up on like the right side of TikTok or Instagram, and just I like to go to the gym, and it's kind of like, oh, you like to go to the gym, you might like this other personal development thing, and I just kind of kept getting these book recommendations. And I was like, you know what, I'll read these books, and then I really liked the books because I was able to like apply their knowledge to my life, like just like how I don't have to make a mistake to learn from somebody else's mistake. I don't have to do something right to learn how to do something right. I can just learn what that right thing is from a book or from a podcast and try doing that thing. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, I can just go back to what I was doing before.
That is wonderful. And yeah, it's amazing when you think about like what a value proposition books are. Especially, I mean, I love fiction books, so let's be clear. I read a ton of fiction, but nonfiction, especially like someone's first book. You think about like they've literally put their entire life's knowledge into a book that you can buy for probably $12 to $20 on Amazon. And I mean, talk about a value in terms of like you just said, you didn't have to figure it out yourself. You can just read some brilliant person's life knowledge in a couple hours or listen to the audiobook, which is something I've gotten into recently. And I love that visual of the dominoes. When you said that, like my mind always goes to like, how do you message something? And like when you said that, my mind immediately went to like visualizing those dominoes. And like, I think we always look back at like decisions and the decision path, but you don't think about that moving forward. But yet, it's such an interesting way to approach life. I mean, Devin, I've never thought about that before. Never, ever, ever. And I think it's beautiful. That's something that's going to stick with me. And just looking at your notes, it sounds like you've not only taken that to heart and conceptualized it, but you've actually put it into action. I know you told me you discovered the industry you want to pursue post graduation. Plus, of course, in true Devin style, I landed an internship in the industry with a 20% pay increase, which is awesome. The part that stuck out to me was I have conducted over 20 informational interviews with professionals in the industry I want to pursue. My friend, that is not normal in any way. Like, that is extraordinary. And I don't know another person. And I'm not over flattering you in an undue manner. I'm just like, I hope you understand, like, I'm very genuine about this. I said this to you at Vegas that, like, if I could buy shares in one human being on earth, essentially, for the future, I would buy shares in you. And like, I hadn't even read this bullet point. Like, that is extraordinary. Who does that? Like, okay, you see the dominoes, yada, yada, yada. That's fine. Everybody listening to this is thinking about these dominoes now. But how the hell do you move from, okay, the dominoes to, I'm going to out of nowhere conduct 20 informational interviews? Like, again, that's not a normal thing. And I'd love to hear how you did that.
Well, I would say like I've always been a little bit forward thinking. Like I went to STEM middle school, and I want to say like the sixth grade. If you would have asked me what I would be when I grow up, I would have said mechanical engineer. And here I am. I have one more semester after this one, my last finals tomorrow, till I get my mechanical engineering degree. And the kind of the same thing applied to like what I wanted to do with my career, because mechanical engineering is like a jack of all trades type of degree. You can do almost any type of engineering you want with it.
Yeah.
But I found the niche that I wanted to pursue. So I started talking to my friends who were doing that niche as a major.
Okay.
And one of my friends, the one that I joined the army with, and then she ended up getting that deployment, she's doing biomedical engineering. And she landed her internship as a freshman, not by applying, but somebody offered her the job, which is unheard of as a freshman.
Yeah.
And I kind of like asked her, I'm like, how did you do that? And she showed me, is that, oh, I just been networking a lot. And she showed me like this big spreadsheet, like with a whole bunch of names, where they work at, what their role is, what section of the company they're in, and how she met them. And she just made connections and started like interviewing these people just about their career. Cause like how I said, you can learn a lot from people's experiences. And people also, just like a quick tip, most people would love to talk about themselves. So it's a very easy conversation if you want to learn about their career and like what they have to like just ask them for advice. Most people are open to it. So I really took advantage of that when my school had a career fair. And I kind of went in with just, I'm not looking for a job right now. I just want to talk to you as a person to learn about your career and where you've been, how you got to where you are. And then at the end of every interview, it's just, is there anybody else that you think would be open to this? And so far, I haven't ran out. And like, I also just like to hop on opportunities to meet more industry professionals. Like, there's certain organizations in my university that like do site tours and go out to like industry, and you have an opportunity to meet people. And I'm really trying to like share that with others in my like social circle. I'm president of mechanical engineering, like the student council.
Yeah.
So I'm like trying to like build industry relations within the student council so that way we could take students to like meet more industry professionals. So yeah.
That is wonderful. So I'm sure we have a whole lot of mechanical engineers listening to this podcast. So maybe reach out to me, feedback@choosefi.com. And if you want to be connected with Devin in some way, obviously this is someone who's incredibly talented. And I love that you've understood the power of connection, right? I think this is something that I hope our entire community understands at this point is relationships matter so much in life. They mean everything. And like you said, yes, people do like to talk about themselves, which is great. So if you go and you're genuinely interested in them and you ask them questions about their life, their career, their path, the dominoes, right? Like people want to talk about themselves. And that's information you can glean, right? Not in like a weird way of like you're trying to like get in with them or something. Like it's nothing like that. You're trying to shortcut the path that they took, some of the errors they made, what worked out well for them. And when you talk to 20 different industry professionals over the course of X number of months, you're going to make connections that you otherwise would not have. I don't even just mean connections in terms of like the friendships, but I mean like literally connections in your brain across like, oh, what are the commonalities here, right? Like, what can I pick up from this? And then, not to mention, all right, look, when it's time to get a job, you have all these connections and they understand that you're not just like desperate, right? Like it's a whole different thing when you're reeking of desperation of, oh, I need a job. And that's the only reason you're reaching out to somebody, as opposed to, hey, look, these are the 20 people I've spoken with. Sounds like more are on the way. And of course, you're following up with them every X number of months, probably sending them an email, asking a question or something like, again, without an ask, right? Like there's no like, give me a job. It's, hey, we had a great lunch or we had a great whatever, coffee. Just wanted to check in with you. Like those kind of things, they really do make a difference. So, yeah, that is really, really cool. And I think just kind of finally here is you talked about, okay, I went to this Design an Extraordinary Life event. You said in your email to me, I stopped drifting. I started designing the future I want to have, and I began to take action to reach it. And I mean, it sounds like you have really taken extraordinary action in a short period of time. And I'm curious, like, where do you go from here? So obviously, at the moment, you have two major things going on. You have the guard and school, but I assume one or both of those things will change at some point in the near term. The school will change, but what do you envision for the next domino or two? Of course, life can take you any which way, but what's the plan as of now?
Yeah. My plan is to, I leave for sergeant school coming up here. So I'll be gone. And then I come back and I start my internship. My plan is to just absolutely crush it at my internship with the hopes of being brought on as a contractor throughout my last semester of school so I can come in part time and still gain experience in the role that I want to be doing. And then after I graduate, the goal is to be working at some medical device company here in the Twin Cities.
Very cool.
In terms of the National Guard, I reach my 6-year contract next March. Haven't fully decided if I want to resign, but in terms of like intentionally designing my future, one of my best friends that I went to basic training with, she's in the Army band, like the Minnesota Army band, and I just so happened to like run into her at a drill. We were talking, and she was excited to re-sign her 6-year contract, which is something you hardly ever hear in the military. It's like, well, I'm already 13 years deep, got to do my 6 so I can make it to my 20. But she was like excited to do it. And that kind of got me interested in like, oh, maybe I could pursue ending up in the Army band. I played saxophone and I was pretty decent at it, played it through middle school through high school. And I was like, maybe I could do that, pick that back up. I just got busy with school. But when I was in school, I was like, I could learn the guitar. So I took a guitar class through the university to try and pick up the basic skills. And now with the teacher that I met in there, I'll be doing lessons over the next however long. And I'm thinking I'm probably going to end up just signing a 2-year contract and just seeing if I can get good enough at guitar in that 2 years. And then if I can't, that's the end. But if I can, I'll just switch over to the band and
Huh.
ride out my 20-year career.
That is really cool. I love that. That's really neat. What a cool little pivot that'll be. So, all right, well, certainly to be continued on that, and I suspect we'll have you back on at some point in the not too distant future to talk about those dominoes, right? Like, where are you going? What are the actions you've taken? And yeah, I'm just really genuinely excited for you, Devin. I'm so glad you came to the live event. It was really wonderful to meet you. I appreciate you reaching out, and yeah, the future is bright, my friend. So again, thanks for being part of our community.
Thank you so much for having me here. This has been just absolutely surreal experience, just finding your podcast. And then there was a little piece of me when I signed up for Vegas. I was like, you might ask me to be on the podcast. And then here I am. But I do have one question for you.
Yeah.
Can I do the hot seat?
Oh, of course you can. Let's do it.
In a world drowning in debt and rampant consumption, trapped by the chains of lifestyle inflation, these questions highlight the secrets of those who have broken free. Welcome to the ChooseFI Hot Seat.
All right, Devin, the hot seat at your request. I love this. Question number 1: what's a podcast, blog, or book that you've enjoyed recently?
In terms of podcast, I've recently picked up the Huberman Lab podcast, which has just been really interesting. I'm an engineer. I like science, like just the practical knowledge that he gives out. And then in terms of books, first book I read this year was Atomic Habits. That one's definitely very high up on my list. And then I'm almost done with the ChooseFI book, also very high up on my list for obvious reasons. And then I guess a non self-help book that I read recently was When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Calanthe. And it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, that's not something I've ever read, but I've definitely heard about it. Highly recommended. So, okay, I'm literally opening up the Amazon tab right now to look that up. All right, Devin, question number 2: an inflection point in your life that was especially memorable or meaningful?
Probably the moment I described laying in my bed at basic training, just being able to finally connect all the dots and see that well, if my past self made these decisions that led me here, my current self can probably make me decisions that will lead me to where I want to be.
Yes. Yeah, that is really something. That domino thought. I hate to keep harping on it, but Devin, you can see my brain kind of spinning whenever you talk about that. It's just such an interesting way to look at it. And I think that's like the future focus that we talk about, right? Is like we have to think long term. And I think that's a way to further bolster that, right? It's okay, these decisions actually make a real impact on future me. And yeah, that is really something. So, all right, let's move on to question number 3: your favorite life hack.
My favorite life hack is buying my books from Goodwill. Obviously, would love to be a friend of the library, but the way that I read books, they would not be a friend of mine because I like to highlight, I like to write in there and just make the books unusable to anybody but me. So just you can find A, B level quality books at Goodwill for hardcovers are $3.99 right now, I think, where I'm at, and then $2 for softcover. It's a double-edged sword because now I just go to Goodwill looking because I have this big list of books I want to read, and you have to keep going back to the Goodwills. But now I have also 50 unread books in my apartment that my girlfriend is not happy about. So
Yeah, I can picture that, and I know the feeling. I have stacks and stacks of books that I'm theoretically are in my queue. But so that's cool. So you go with a list because I was going to ask you do you go there just almost a la a bookstore? Like, hey, I'm going to browse and see if I find something, or are you going in very overtly with a list? So it sounds like certainly overtly with the list, but I'm sure you peruse as well.
Yeah, I go in and I'll literally usually I'm listening to the ChooseFI podcast and I'll just scan every single row of the hardcover books just because, they stand up better because they're hardcover and secondhand. And then I'll just look through every shelf and then go home. I usually go on a Wednesday because where I'm at, there's a military discount. So I get them even cheaper. And yeah.
Love it. All right. Question number 4, your biggest financial mistake.
So I have 2. One of them is a little bit funny because I just recently listened to the Dogecoin episodes that you guys had back in the day.
Oh, wow. I forgot we even did that.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I bought Dogecoin when it was like 0.0027.
Okay.
And I had like $100 worth of it. And I like ran the math. Like I made $100 off of it. Not bad. And then like there's that first bubble and then there's the second bubble, made another $100 there. But if I would have just kept my initial investment in, like took out my $100 and just let it ride, when it reached its 40-cent peak, it would have been, I want to say, over $15,000.
Oh my God.
So like now I know not to get your initial investment out, and then if it's just speculation, which this was, might as well let the rest ride. Maybe take like your little bit of profit and then just leave a little bit in there and just let it ride. That's probably what I would do if I could go back then. And then I would say just like I've been working since I was 15. This is my second mistake. And I didn't really have anything to show for it by the time I turned 18 because I just wasn't that savvy with money yet. Like I was beating all my expenses, saving a little bit here and there, but I wasn't being intentional about it. So like all those years from like 16 to 18, I had nothing to show for it. And then moreover, from 18 to 21, not maxing out my Roth IRA just because I had the means to do it. Like I've been working and I've always made more than $7,000 a year every year that I've worked. And when you're living at home as a teenager or as an early college student in the summertime, your expenses aren't that high. So I just didn't know where all the money went.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I think that's probably pretty normal. And sure, hindsight is 2020, of course. I think one kind of cool thing to pass along, and I know Sean Mullaney has talked about this in terms of like his love for the Roth IRA. And, since you can theoretically withdraw the contribution at any point, if you think there's a high likelihood, of course, that you're going to leave it in there and let it ride, then make the contribution. But worst case scenario, you can pull that money out if it's your contribution. So this is more not necessarily to 18-year-olds, but for anybody, is once that tax year closes, you can't go back. So years later, you can't go back and say, oh, but I had room in my 2021 Roth IRA. Can I make the contribution now? No, you can't, obviously. So there's time limits on these things. Maybe max it out, especially knowing that, hey, if worse comes to worse, you could always pull that contribution out. So it's kind of like just preserving some optionality, I guess, is how I would think about that. But yeah, I mean, listen, we all make mistakes. I think that's why we asked the question, right? So, all right, Devin, question number 5, the advice you would give your younger self.
Right on that same thing. Just start investing when you turn 18 and find ChooseFI sooner.
Oh man, that's funny. Well, it sounds like you're doing quite okay, but duly noted, certainly. All right, here's the fun one that we always call the bonus question for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why, but what purchase have you made in the last, let's say, 12 months or so, plus or minus, that has added the most value to your life?
Besides the ticket to Vegas, because I feel like that's a cop-out. But I would say probably the concerts and the trips that I've gone on with like my friends and family. I will always, like I said, spend money to make memories because they pay like memory dividends and all this stuff. And I guess like a tangible object is I just bought a new study Bible that's like it's a study Bible and a journaling Bible. Usually they're like one or the other,
Okay.
or just regular Bible with no margins and just words. But this one's both, so it's literally like an 8x8 cube almost.
Huh.
But one of my big goals this year with me and my girlfriend was to find a church together and get back into our faith a little bit more. So just that intentional decision, and then we've found a church and found a church group. So it's made just studying a little bit easier.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. I love that. And yeah, it sounds like from what you said about I'm a friend of the library, but the library is not a friend of me. It sounds like that's part of your reading, right? Is taking notes, underlining things, highlighting things. So that's a really neat way to be, much more intentional about reading generally. And yeah, like you're talking about your faith here. So that's really wonderful. Devin, I'm so glad you decided to do the hot seat. That was fun. I think it reminds me I should do that much more often. So, Devin, I'm not sure if there is a way, frankly, but is there any way that somebody could reach out to you? I know I could always route emails, but I probably prefer to do it more efficiently. Is there any way people could reach out to you?
Yes, I was going to ask you for permission first, so this is a great opportunity. But ever since finding ChooseFI, towards like the start of the school year, I had like this idea percolating in the back of my mind that maybe I should start a blog or a vlog or an Instagram account, like cataloging my journey and just self-improvement and like fitness, health, money, just everything, and like sharing that with others because it's something I had passion about. So it'd be okay if I use that email to like hold myself accountable because school got busy and there's just been a whirlwind. Now I'm here, but it would be great to have the accountability of the ChooseFI community
Ooh.
to make sure I have something out in the ether before
Yeah.
this episode goes live.
I love it. Okay, that's awesome. So, right, if you have an email, it sounds like there's a web domain or something. So maybe there'll be a website, or maybe you even have an email capture on there or something. So yeah, give the URL of the website, and then if you have an email, for an accountability, is get some kind of email form on the website so that people can sign up for an email list or something, and that way you can reach out to them or have a contact form or some such. So anyway, what's the domain name and what's the email you want to send people to?
Both of them will be freedombytheday.com and freedombytheday@gmail.com for the email. Then I also have a bookstagram, like all the books that I'm reading and quotes that I like that I've just been trying to also percolate and build, which is called Liberated Mind Library.
Okay, very cool. We will have all those links. That's a great domain name, by the way. Freedom by the Day. That's really great. So we'll have those links in the show notes. And yeah, reach out to Devin, follow what he's doing. Obviously, this is somebody who's got a lot of things going on and is really going places. So Devin, I really appreciate you being here. And it's been absolutely wonderful to meet you a couple of times and to get to know you. So thanks for being part of our community.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everything that you have done for the community and the countless lives that you have changed.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.